Welcome, everybody. This is the Beer Guys radio show. We are guys drinking beer, and we used to be on the actual radio. So it all worked out. It all made sense. Very easy naming convention.
Aren't we still streamed somewhere? Like our podcast is actually streamed on some internet related thing, or
no? We had a couple of stations that when we quit radio, they did reach out and say, "Hey, we really want to keep carrying your show. Is there any way we can get it?" And, I explained to him, I was like, "Well, it's podcast format now, so we don't have it set for the radio breaks and all that." And they're like, "Well, that's fine." So I set up like a Google Drive to share them. And after doing it for 2 months and he hadn't downloaded a single one, I just quit doing it.
Got it.
Yeah.
So, okay.
Yeah. I was like, okay.
I thought we were still technically on a radio station somewhere in the world. Okay.
We might be. I mean, I think there's stations that play podcast or stream that. So maybe, Ryan, I don't want to crush your hopes and dreams here in that. So I'll just say maybe. I'm saying there's a chance.
I got 5 years as a host doing it, so I'm good. I mean, I'm fine.
Yeah.
Check that off.
We did the radio.
Yeah.
Box has been checked there. Sure enough. Well, y'all, we're going to jump into the show here. Comments. We'd love to hear what you're thinking, what you're drinking, what is up in your world. We're here. We're unlicensed therapists, so if you have a problem, we'll solve that too. We don't mind. We've got solutions.
Sure.
But with that said, guys, here we go. Welcome, everybody, to the Beer Guys radio show. Thanks for joining us, hanging out, having a beer, having a good time and some conversations. I'm Tim Dennis. Brian Hewitt, how's it going?
It's going well. I'm doing all right. I'm here. I'm drinking a beer. It's fantastic. How you doing, Tim?
I'm good. I'm here, and I'm about to drink a beer. So
okay.
I'm almost as good as you are right now.
Almost.
Almost.
Are you getting used to being almost as good as me?
But, I am. You can never catch up,
That's right.
It's like when I worked in a power tool factory, they use these Japanese manufacturing technologies, and part of the principles was continuous improvement, that if you're the best and you're continuously improving from there, no one can ever catch you.
That's a really good point. Yeah.
That's just it. Your competitors can never catch up. Nate, how are you doing? Not as good as Brian. We've already established that.
Well, honestly, I'm doing all right. I'm a little tired, but that's just because I'm trying to keep up with Brian.
Yeah, it'll wear you out, man.
Yeah.
Not even any point. Just do your best.
To be fair, to help everybody out, I've started running backwards to kind of slow down and make it harder.
Okay.
So you
Why
might
are you showing off.
you might be able to catch up at some point in time.
Yeah.
It's kind of neat seeing
that
his
thing
beard
above your head. Yeah.
blow out in front of him like that when he's running backwards. It gets a little breezy there. You can hear it like when a fast car passes by you. Is that Brian?
Yeah.
That's pretty amazing stuff. Well, guys, let's get into it. Beers of the week. Brian, what you drinking, man? What you drinking?
So I started off with a Shock Top Twisted Pretzel, which I'm not sure if I had it before, but that was fine. I think you gave that to me, Tim, right?
I think I gave it. Yeah, we got, they sent us a couple. And I still haven't had one yet. So we got that in the, I think it's Breckenridge Christmas Ale.
I still have that. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm not ready to get into that yet, but the Twisted Pretzel is a Belgian style wheat ale brewed with caramel malt and natural flavors. I got that from the bottle. It's pretzel-y. I guess the natural flavors are all pretzel. So that was fine. And I'm getting into a Creature Comforts Brew for One Whale Fall, which we talked about that beer last week. We talked about Truck and Tap. And it goes to I think it goes to actually a scholarship for a marine related charity or something to that effect. I don't have all the details in front of me, but it's kind of a cool beer. And you know what? After we talked about it on social media, I got the more you know GIF in response to that show. So like somebody else didn't specifically mentioning Whale Fall. And so somebody else probably didn't know what it was. So pretty interesting topic. And when this is done, I will get into Parrish's West Coast Ghost, which is a West Coast Dippa. So that is what my plan is.
We had a nice Parrish drop in Georgia this week. I saw we got some Bissell Brothers, some Parrish, a few other things. We had some good beers hit the state.
Need to look out for some Bissell Brothers. I haven't seen any of those around here in a while, and I enjoyed the ones I had. So.
I didn't even know they were still coming, to be honest. It's been so long since I saw them. And I think the deal is that it's just occasional. I don't think it's like a regular distribution. We get them every now and then. Nate, you probably know. I think you work for the distributor
Yep,
at one
I
point.
used to work for the
So
distributor. I actually picked up a can of the Bissell Brothers German Pilsner that dropped this week. It's not
okay.
on my beers of the week this week, but it'll be next week.
All right. Well, Nate, that's good timing. What is on your beers of the week for this week?
So I started off with for my pregame, I did a Real Revival Pulp, which is an American pale ale. It had some nice citrus notes in it. And then in my glass right now from Old Nation, I've got Solace, which is a black lager that shows up on stream really nice. It's got some good like anise and cinnamon notes to it. So it's a nice little spice black lager.
I have a cologne that would go wonderful with anise and cinnamon notes. So
Are we
let me
doing
know
scent and beer? Are
if
we
you
doing
need
scent and
that.
beer pairings?
You know, I thought about that. I just feel that even if you got something that was a good combination, it's having something else taking up your aromas it's not going to pair well with beer. I don't think even a proper pairing would enhance the experience in any way. It would detract from it, is my opinion.
So I will not spritz the sides of my shaker pint when I drink my.
You could try, yeah, like they do. Don't they do that with vermouth sometimes in certain drinks?
They do.
They'll
right?
mist vermouth on top.
Yeah. All that stuff is edible, right?
One way to find out. You know,
that's right.
when cologne used to be an internal thing, like a tonic. Like there is what is known to be, is not the first one of the first colognes called from a house called 4711, and it's from Cologne, Germany, Köln, and so that's where the name comes from. But it started off as a tonic, like supposed to cure what ails you there. But if I understand the story correctly, the government started mandating that for any tonic, you had to release the list of ingredients on there. And dude didn't want to give up his formula, so he's like, it's a fragrance now. So,
Yeah.
so I have a bottle of that. I should set back one day and try it on the rocks and see how it is.
As long as it's a tonic and not a colonic, but coming
Yeah,
from where,
or both.
or maybe both. I mean, maybe it could be both, right?
Yeah, it could be. It could be.
Coffee works for both, I think. So
they claim it does, Brian. I don't know about those
Some
people though.
do.
Yeah,
probably not.
But guys, for mine this week, I'm going NA today. Appropriate with one of our stories. I've been a little under the weather, so I'm avoiding alcohol. Just been feeling a little rough, and so I didn't want to miss out on having a drink with the homies. So I have from Best Day Brewing. I have their Electro Lime. Brian, did you try that one? I know you got some of them. Did you try?
I've got some, and
particular one.
I need to get into that one. I think that's in my beer fridge. So
okay.
I almost grabbed that one. I think that's the one I nearly grabbed. How is it? You're drinking it now. What do you think?
It's very good, guys. I mean, if you're an NA drinker, and I'm sipping this, and it's as we've talked about a few times before, all NA beers have an NA taste to them. I'm barely getting in this, and I don't know if it's the lime that's cutting it, but I think this is one that if you put it down in a blind panel, and let me drink more and make sure my opinion doesn't change because I've only had a couple of sips of it, but it's good. Like if I was in the mood for a beer and I couldn't have a beer like right now, it takes care of business for me, sure enough. But we'll talk more about NA as we get in there. There's some hot topics there, hot takes on a few different
Indeed,
things.
there is.
Yep. Well, guys, moving right along. You know, I am drinking an Electro Lime lager or lager style, and even though it is November here, we're still pretty warm in Georgia. Some cooler nights, so I think that's appropriate. But I like my lagers cold. Other beers, I could get a little warmer, hit those cellar temps and that. But Brian, if I want to choose the best beer glass to keep my beer the coldest, we've had some scientists go to work and find that out for us, right?
Yeah, we've got a study. A professor of thermal and fluid sciences, fluid sciences is a thing, in Brazil has taken on the important challenge of determining which of several popular beer glass designs will keep your beer the coldest. As important as that might be here in the U.S., it's warm here. Beer gets warm, and during the summer it can get really hot. It's especially challenging for tropical countries like Brazil to keep their beer cold when they're drinking it. He estimates on a windy day at the beach with temperatures around 100 degrees Fahrenheit, which is common there, within 3 minutes his beer is basically undrinkable. It's hot, and
Okay.
I've had beer in places on the beach where there's wind, and I've seen those glasses actually get hot to the touch, like the beer bottle or whatever, it gets hot. So that's a real thing. To keep the study manageable, Claudio Pellegrini, who is that professor, focused on the shape of the glass alone, eliminating challenging variables like heat transfer from hands. You're not going to worry about that, and the impact of beer foam. And he determined an existing style of glassware is mathematically superior to all others for keeping your beer longer. So it's one that exists. Anybody have a guess as to which one?
Let's see. Existing style of glassware mathematically superior at keeping beer cold longer. So I'm curious what all variables he looked at here. Like, is this being held in your hand? Is it just sitting on the table?
I think it's sitting on the table because he wanted to eliminate the heat transfer from your hands as a factor.
Oh, I see.
So if it's
I
just
missed
sitting,
that part, Brian. Sorry, you did say that. Okay.
And no foam is involved in it. I don't think. I assume he poured them all in a way as to minimize the foam, so that the foam wouldn't be a factor as well when judging the different glassware. So I intentionally
Brian,
obscured the answer so you guys could
see. I was trying to cheat and then pretend like I knew what was up. But my guess would be, in that case, a shaker pint, because of the thick walled glass, that it would have the most thermal insulation to keep your beer cold. So that's my guess, is if you're not holding it and putting a death grip around it, the shaker pint is the one that's going to keep it coldest.
So what do you think, Mo, Mike, Nate? Are you go with Tim on the straighter side, maybe more narrow, or are you going like more bulbous, or what do you think?
Hey, quick coaching. Shut your face there, Hugh.
No, it's all good. Honestly, my answer is the same as Tim's, because if it's just sitting there and you're not getting that heat transfer from the hand, I mean, the shaker pint, the Boston pint has those thicker glass walls to it. I would think that would, like Tim said, lend it to being a little bit more thermal insulating.
Nate, the only thing I think that could play against us here is you have a flat slab of glass there that may not reflect as much as something with some curvature to it. But I'm trying to think of any that I could define that may have. I am sticking with my original answer, Brian, the shaker pint.
So, okay. You guys are kind of in the right range of glassware. I was wondering about that as well. I'm not sure he was considering the thickness of the glass itself. So that could play into it. What he found is the classic Pilsner beer glass with a narrow bottom, and his drawings in the study are a little bit more fluted or curved at the top, but it's that narrow, wider at the top thing that seems to mathematically be the best choice for keeping your beer cold. And I wonder if it has a little bit to do with the narrowness of it, so it less wind resistance, so less friction, so less heat transfer, that sort of thing. Just speculating. I didn't read enough into it to know.
Let's throw a lot of bro science at this thing.
Yeah, let's do that.
Let's do that. So I would think a narrower glass, the heat transfer would be quicker throughout the body of the beer. But he did say narrow at the bottom, a little wider at top. So, okay, yes. I get that. But you still have that. A Pilsner glass is traditionally a little thinner glass. Do you know all the glasses he tested, Brian? Or do you know others that he tested there? Like, what was the competition?
I don't have the complete list. I know he did look at the shaker pint. He did look at
that was in there.
He did look at a tulip style that I think he called it the Brazilian tulip, so it might be slightly different than the one we'd use, and that didn't work. I don't recall all of the different ones, but he looked at a variety of them, and there was not a complete list in the article, but of the ones he looked at,
based on like scientific studying and running the numbers, or did he like measure the temperature in the beer? Is this just his?
It looked like it was more running the numbers using thermodynamics, basically calculations. So mathematically, he didn't observe the. I think it would be interesting to have the same beer in all these glasses and actually measure the temperature. Yeah. I don't know where you would measure it exactly on the beer to determine. Maybe if you had a probe that was down in the center of the beer, I'm not sure how you would measure it. That would be a good way of doing it. No, he went from a mathematical point of view, and he was looking at the actual the design, the shape of the glass itself. So I think he was thinking more about the curves and the thickness of the glass, and was not making. I didn't read the actual study itself, which was very
Okay.
scientific.
All right.
He is a
I'm
scientist. He's a
curious.
physicist, after all.
That's what
I
they
couldn't
say,
make my way
man.
through a lot
That's
of it.
what they say. We're professional beer drinkers, though, and sometimes that
True.
trumps being a scientist. But interesting. Okay.
I would take, if somebody wants to do a study where they actually compare them all and use, I don't know, like the temperature gun or like an actual thermal thing to check all of them. And it seems like something that one of the home brewers would have maybe done at some point in time. But anyway, yeah, I would put as much credence in the observations of that as, mathematically looking at these things. But there's something to be said about like if you're in a windy environment, having the narrower pint, less friction. I could see that maybe being a thing if he's using math on that. So, of course, he does say that. The real answer for the situation might just be a smaller glass that you drink more quickly, so it doesn't have a chance to get warm. So maybe like Kolsch service, like Kolsch glass is maybe the real answer to this situation.
Don't be breaking out the liter mugs. Did he test the liter mugs? Because those are super thick.
Those are thick, boys.
That would be interesting. Yeah. You know what? Again, somebody needs to do.
We need more science.
Study.
We need more science. Yeah.
We need somebody to fill up all these glasses and measure them all and see how quickly they get warm.
It's always fun to see and disagree with scientific process from our feeble minds.
Yeah, he's a physicist. He doesn't know anything about beer. We know about beer.
That's right. That's right. Well, Brian, a city that's known a lot for beer is Prague. A lot of people go to Czech Republic, and you always hear about Belgium, Belgian beer tours, German beer tours, and that. Prague is also a great destination. From the people I know that have been to a lot of these different places, always say that Prague is an absolute awesome time, but things may be getting slightly less awesome for having a beer in Prague.
Yeah, I think it's been a little too awesome there for a little too long. The volume of beer they drink is amazing, and I've heard that they're one of the cheapest places to drink beer too. And all of that means is, you won't be surprised to know that organized pub crawls are kind of a big deal in Prague. They set them up, and they can get really out of hand. The city was tired of the public drunkenness caused by these things, the noise, the garbage, the security issues that they cause. And they also had a related problem with cheap alcohol-related tourism. So apparently people were flying in from all over, or training in or busing in or whatever from all over, to get loaded and get into trouble in Prague, because that's where you got drunk and fought, I guess. As a result, beer pub crawls have officially been banned in Prague starting in November, this month here, at least between the hours of 10 p.m. and 6 a.m. So a little bit of a clickbaitiness to this article.
Gotcha.
But here's the thing. From what I read, apparently these pub crawls would go all night until like 6 a.m. So there's a very real reason they don't stop it at like 4 a.m. They're stopping it. They're making that whole evening closed off to people running around. Pub crawl organizers who violate the ban could be fined up to $4,300 in the local currency. But they apparently can still organize their pub crawls for earlier in the day, probably when it's easier to manage all of that stuff. And I guess there's nothing really stopping an individual from going out and just drinking and walking from one place to the next. But I guess it was a huge problem. Yeah, don't crawl.
Depending on the time. I feel like that banning them from 10 to 6 really opens up a great market for the 7 a.m. to 9 p.m. pub crawl.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah.
And it could be one of those things. I know there's been other areas. I think it may have been in Ibiza that this happened, that like certain things were banned, and basically people just paid the fines because the profit they could make not obeying the law, basically. And I guess if there aren't escalated repercussions, that could be worth it. In San Diego during COVID, the city let restaurants set up outdoor seating like in parking spaces along the street. And then once the COVID restrictions were lifted, they're like, okay, guys, we need our parking back. And you've got this long to do it. And people are like, man, we're killing it with this outdoor seating. And then they said, okay, we're going to start fining. It's like X a day. And they're like, oh, well, we're making way more than that. We'll just keep paying the fine. So works out. Could be one of those situations. Brian, have you ever been to Prague on your travels?
I haven't. No, it's a place I want to go. And yeah, in fact, my wife has mentioned it as a place she'd like to go. And
okay,
it's just never happened. It's one of those things. Love to go there. Love to check it out. I want to go on an underground pub crawl for late in the evening. But you know what? You can't start pub crawling all day unless you start at 6 a.m. So I'll do the 6 a.m. to 9 in the evening pub crawl. I'll
it'll be great. It'll be a good time, man. Start off with some bacon and eggs and kegs and just go from there.
Yeah, that would be great. Sounds fantastic.
Good stuff. Well, Brian, when I launched last week's episode, I always try and come up with some kind of catchy title that gets people interested and descriptive. And I think my titles were too long in the past. And I'm like, I'm just rambling here. People aren't going to be interested. So I just made it. I'm sick of talking about brewery closures. Was like,
yes,
because we had a couple of big ones, but we can't get away from them, Brian. They happen all the time. And there was a big one, a historic one that we heard about this week. Who's closing on us, Brian?
Yeah, it's too big to not mention. I saw that and I thought about that the first when you mentioned this story. I'm like, we have to talk.
We got to talk about this one, right?
Yeah. So effective January 17th, Molson Coors is closing the 157-year-old Leinenkugel Brewery in Chippewa Falls, Wisconsin. The move is likely related to Molson Coors' August earnings call, where they reported brand volumes declining 7.3%. It's been killing them lately, and they promised to cut costs to offset the slump, and this is one of those costs. Production of Leinenkugel's beers will move to the Molson Coors Brewery in Milwaukee, which is already producing about 75% of Leinenkugel's beer. Apparently, the expiration of a contract between them and Pabst Brewing, which I think we talked about in the show a few times, that's happening at the end of the year. They no longer have to brew Pabst for Pabst, and that allows them to increase their volume at this Milwaukee brewery so they can take on this Leinenkugel volume as well. Molson Coors is also closing the company's 10th Street Brewery in Milwaukee at the same time, with the sale of the 10th and Blake breweries to Tilray Brands, an investment in canning capacity that they also made at the other Milwaukee brewery. The 10th Street Brewery was also no longer needed. It was just an additional cost that they decided they need to get rid of. The total numbers of employees affected by the closures was not disclosed, but the estimate for the Leinenkugel Brewery at Chippewa Falls is about 56. The other one, I think, might be more significant. So they are, I think, in the hundreds potentially of people will be let go as a result of closing these two breweries. But it is kind of it's tragic to see a 157-year-old brewery getting closed down. I mean, it's like,
well, you think about what all these breweries have been through in 150. I mean, 157 years. We're talking prohibition. A brewery surviving prohibition there, and it's just it's unfortunate that we get to a point, kind of a victim of their own success. You do well enough that a company wants to buy you for an investment, and then the market turns down, and we've seen so many, Anchor, Leinenkugels that are getting, closed on us. I'm sure there's other big Modern Times. Modern Times is being closed and being moved to a contract model there.
That's right.
So, and these breweries, man, if they had been independent, they probably could have hung on. I mean, I know we're having a lot of closures here for other things, but like a Leinenkugel, if they had their joint, they could have probably hung on if they were independent, but they wouldn't have had redundancy like Molson Coors does by owning a group of breweries there. So it's sad.
I want to say that Molson Coors has owned them since like the late 80s. So they weren't like a recent purchase, but yeah.
Have they owned them that? Yeah. Leinenkugel.
I want to say like 89 or something like that. It's been quite a while. In the article, I looked at a couple articles about this and it was mentioned in one of them, and that's a long time. It's it is crazy to think like something that lasts this long with the prohibition, with their like world wars and stuff like that, is closed because an earnings call went poorly one year in the 2020s. No, so I'm like, all the history's gone now. Like, dang,
Thanks, Leinenkugel. We appreciate it.
Yeah. Don't let the door hit you on the backside on your way out of here. And
I wonder who will be next.
Yeah.
There will be. We'll hear
Yes.
about it soon enough. Sure enough. Well, Brian, Vine Pair, shout out to Vine Pair. We chat about their articles a decent bit because they do some fun list type things like Ask a Brewer type stuff. So, this is one. They went to brewers and they asked 9 brewers what they thought the most overrated beer trend is. And what do we hear, Brian? What are some of the most overrated trends?
Yeah, so 9 brewers. It's a pretty interesting list. I'm just going to go through it. I've got little excerpts of their comments. All of them had like a paragraph of text, but I'll just go through them in order. The first one is posting negative beer reviews on social media, and this comes from Trevor Wells out of Brewery X in Anaheim, California, and the gist of his comment is keep it positive or find another hobby. And I think it was really related to the theatrical negative reviews where people go out of their way to defecate on a brewery because they had a beer that I think to impress friends is kind of a way of punching down at a brewery that doesn't have the reputation of the beer elite. I don't know what you guys think about this, but I'm just going to comment on these as I go. And I kind of think that sometimes this is valid, but other times people if you get a legitimately bad review and there's commentary in there, you should probably listen to your customers. This is actually good feedback in some cases. Now, if somebody's just going through the motions to just make themselves look funny and just to talk crap for internet points, then I get the point here. So
one person that comes to mind that I think of is old DDB, old don't drink beer, and he sure isn't all roses and sunshine. He's honest in what he says, and I don't agree with Trevor necessarily. Because if all reviews are positive, then there is no point in reviews there. If all you're doing is cheerleading this stuff up there. And, we've always been one to, we've got Beercoy Nation here said beer trolls need love too.
They do.
They do. So now, you know what? That's a good point. There are folks out there that are trolls and they just post hate in order to post hate. Yes. But if you're posting a legitimately negative beer review because you didn't care for the beer, there was a flaw in the beer. Hey, we love you, craft brewers, but some of y'all, you're not hitting the mark out there. And even good brewers sometimes miss the mark. So it's worth it. So I think if they're done properly, constructively, they have value.
I agree. I tend to agree. And I do my best to be diplomatic in my check-ins, but if I'm writing something in Untapped and I'm giving it a bad rating or saying something about it's to let me know in the future that this was bad and I may encounter this again and I need to give it a second thought when I do it. So it's utility for me and not necessarily meant to be bad against somebody else, but maybe it'll work out that way and maybe they should read what it is. Maybe it's a thing that they can fix. Maybe I'm an idiot. Who knows? These things can happen. So
now when we started Beer Guys Radio, it was the young days of the hype, I guess you'd say, younger 2016, 2015, 2016. So, craft beer was pretty popular then, but there was a lot of people still coming over to craft beer, still starting to learn about it. And before we kicked off, we kind of had a meeting of what's our goal. And ours was the promotion of beer. So we and I didn't talk negatively about brewers, because we were just really, our goal was to let people know these breweries exist, let people know these breweries and these beers exist, and go out and discover them, on your own. If there was, our negative review is we just didn't talk about you. Yes. So with that was basically it. If it was bad beer, really bad beer, we're just not going to promote you, So
the things left unsaid are the worst things.
Right. Because if we really talk up a brewery, we mean it. We're not fluffing somebody up just for the sake of doing it. But we would just choose silence over negativity there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That seems smart.
Yeah. Yeah. Brian, this next one, this is hot.
Yeah,
stuff.
let's get on the next one. We got plenty to go. So Luker's side pull faucets and taps are facets. Are said to be overrated by two different brewers, Todd DiMatteo from Good Word here in Georgia, and Tyler March from Wild East Brewing in Brooklyn. And wow, I mean, go
Todd,
ahead, Tim.
Todd, my man, I'm gonna need you, if I'm mistaken here, and I don't think I am, but I'm almost sure there's a Good Word Brewing shirt with a picture of a side pull faucet on it, of a Lucre faucet. And I think he's got one with a Spundig valve on
He does have a
there.
Spunding one. Yeah, I've seen that
So
one
I
a
could
number
be
of times.
mistaken. And you know what? I did read the article, and Todd said, look, I'm not saying they don't have their place. I think they said they've got 4 of them there.
Yeah.
At the brew pub. But we did, Brian, you remember when like the side pull and the slow pour beers first hit Georgia? Like that trend first hit over here, and the old Porter beer bar was the first place that had them, and we went down there, and we've got a lot of nice side pull places now. But yeah, I thought that was kind of funny coming from Todd, because to be honest, I kind of thought he was a fanboy of that side pull faucet there. But
yeah, his comment was there's a faucet worship that seems silly to him. Like people have lost their minds about it. Maybe have gone over the edge with it. The Tyler March, the other brewer, points out that there's often little regard to how they're being used to pour beer. And we saw this happen like Orpheus when they were still open, when they're used to pour beer the wrong way, which is the problem they had at Orpheus, not this other part, or the glassware isn't clean. The appearance of the beer and the flavor of the beer suffers. So the point is I think they're both making kind of the same point. People are like, the fact that you have it doesn't mean anything if you don't know how to use it, you don't take care of your lines, and you don't clean your glasses. So
yeah.
Are they overrated? No, I don't think so. I love that we have so many that have them, and I will always order something off of them because I like what they do to beer.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, these are places that care about beer and know how to pour them and know how to take care of the glassware and everything else. So
you may like them because a lot of the places that choose to get them are the places that care enough about the beer, to do it right now.
I don't know that I've seen places that just put them in as ornamentation, though. I don't know if I've come across that yet.
We went to a beer fest a few years ago, and I don't know if you recall this, but there was a jockey box there that had a side pull tap on a jockey box.
I don't remember that.
And I don't believe they really knew how to use it. That they were just pouring. Hey, we got a side pull. We're pouring off of a side pull here on our jockey box. So at the time, I was like, well, that's neat. But that was about it. So, okay, I'll agree. You can love it without worshiping it, I guess.
Yeah, the worship can get a little silly with that. All right, we got the next one is kind of a hot take. Daniel Munoz from Everywhere Brewing in Orange, California says lagers are overrated, and makes the point that beer makers saying that all I drink is lager is kind of maybe what the point of it is. He still loves his IPAs, but I don't think that means lagers are overrated. I think brewers saying all they drink is IPA or all they drink is lagers may be an overrated or a trite or cliche thing. I don't know. I don't think that's either though.
I don't, because Brian, we've hung out with brewers, after hours, after events and stuff like that. They're not kicking back big heavy beers, and that's not typically. Now, I do know brewers that they're IPA drinkers, but I also know brewers that will have a what's the go-to Coors Banquet. I know a lot of brewers that Coors Banquet is a go-to for them. And I remember that we did the after party from Shelton Fest at Argosy in Atlanta, and with the brewers, the after party with the brewers. And I think it was, what's the one from Burial, because I think it had just hit Georgia, but everybody was crushing that one at the time.
About Surf Wax, their IPA?
No, it was a lager. I think it was Burial. But anyhow, just to make the point, I do know that hanging around some brewers after hours or casually, there is a lot of lager drinking on. I won't say it's exclusive, but I definitely think there's a lot of lager drinking happening. Overrated, maybe, but I'm not a brewer, so I can't speak for all brewers. I can just speak for the experience that I've had hanging around them.
Yeah, it could be trendy. I just think that if the time that we've we've homebrewed, but the time we helped out many years ago at Orpheus, by the end of that, the last thing I want to drink, I'm hot, I'm worn out, I'm sweaty. I, a lager would have just gone down so well. Like a
Crush
big
it.
Orpheus stout probably would have made me sick at that point in time because I'm so hot and so. Anyway,
Yeah.
so the next one, we're getting on the next one. Richie Telvin from Space Cadet Brewing in Philadelphia says non-alcoholic beers are overrated, and I think that his point is that the market is becoming oversaturated with them, and pricing non-alcoholic beers equal to or higher than regular beer without the value added from the alcohol is unsustainable. And I think based on our earlier conversations, you have thoughts on this, Tim.
I have thoughts, Brian.
Yeah,
I have
think you have
thoughts.
thoughts.
So
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of hype around NA beer right now. Overrated, maybe, but I believe that we're just seeing the growth of the NA segment. You know, the boom of it here. Was craft beer overrated when it went through its boom? Yeah, probably a little bit. You know, but what happens is we get some good stuff out of the deal, and there'll be some people who are opportunists that maybe not stick around. So we'll see. We'll see on that. But him talking about the value add with the alcohol, I'm not really sure that that's a value add in my opinion. So I mean, if you're doing a good NA beer, you're using similar ingredients to a regular beer plus extra steps, probably. Now they do
Yeah.
have yeast now that make it a little bit easier, but I don't necessarily consider alcohol to be a value add in alcoholic beer because of what it takes to make a good NA beer.
It clearly, the removal of it is actually the value add. That's why
Right.
they're not super cheap. I'm like, oh yeah, we threw together this little bit of sugar water and little dark food coloring. There you go. You know, cheap. No,
Right.
the removing it is the hard part, which allows people who can't drink alcohol for one reason or another or don't want to enjoy beer. So yeah. I disagree with this a lot, and I think we've got another story that we probably will get to that will also disagree with that. But
Okay. Yeah. I mean, I think we've talked about it, Brian, since Athletic was just getting launched. You know, we met those guys kind of early in their launch and talked to them about the birth of the NA craft segment and all of that. So we've seen it. There's a lot of hype around it now and a lot of stuff. We have been sent some samples of NA beers that should have never been put in cans. I mean, we've had some really bad stuff. So, you know, like I said, this Best Day Brewing, and I will say, as I've drank into the Best Day a little bit more, I can tell a little bit that it's an NA, but I still enjoy it. It still hits that spot that I need there. But there's some rough stuff out there, and there's some people that are just throwing stuff out there that they shouldn't. And I think that is a problem you run into with anything when it starts to become hyped, you know. And we saw several craft breweries where it was just people who really didn't know anything about beer. They threw some money at something, tried to do something with it, and they failed, you know, because they didn't have the passion and the skills to make a successful craft brewery. But there's my rambling thoughts on that subject.
And Stephen Pete brings up a good point. I think I did share around that for the first first mixed pack of non-alcoholic beer was just released ever. That's nationwide available from Sierra Nevada. So that's happening. Like that, it's never happened before. Like we can't be oversaturated if nobody's released a mixed pack of non-alcoholic beers. So you think about it, like I've never seen one. It's always just like it's that six pack or that one. So like getting an actual mix pack of non-alcoholic beers is pretty cool. You know what?
Did Athletic not do one?
I don't know. So I don't think so, and it may not. Or if they did, it wasn't a nationwide availability thing. So this is a nationwide availability, which I think is a key to that being a significant step. And I have never had any of them. So now I need to get that so I can get all of the different kinds and sample all of them.
You did finally find Black Butte NA, right?
I did, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nate, yes, sir. Nate?
Untitled Art has a non-alcoholic mixed 12 pack.
There you go.
Oh, do they?
Look at
Okay.
that. Crazy talk. Crazy talk.
Not nationwide, though, perhaps.
Brian,
But yeah.
we've been rambling a lot here, so I'm actually going to break this in the middle of this particular story for
Okay.
you to tell everyone how awesome our sponsor, Truck and Tap, is.
Yeah. You know what? The tap lists at Truck and Tap are starting to show signs of the upcoming holiday season. If you like cranberries, and I do, there are a lot of fun options available right now. I'm talking about Prairie's Seasick Crocodile, as well as Six Bridges Sour Continuum and Reformation Sour Alani, all of them featuring cranberries, all of them on tap right now at Truck and Tap. But I don't think I'm ready for cranberries just yet. Maybe next week. I don't know. We'll see how it goes. So I went a different direction with my beer picks for this week, and here they are at Truck and Tap Woodstock. My pick is Yazoo's Fooder Noir. It's an interesting take on the Belgian strong dark style. It features both Belgian and Norwegian yeast, and I think house blend of yeast as well, and was aged in a French oak foeder. It sounds like this one could be amazing. And I'm guessing that the Norwegian yeast were probably quite, but I don't know. It wasn't specified anywhere I looked. Creature Comforts Cocoa Bunny is on tap at the Duluth location, and I haven't had it yet this year, so I'm definitely going to start there at Duluth. If you haven't had it before, it's a milk porter made with Ethiopian coffee, cocoa nibs, vanilla, and toasted coconut, and it's just great. You just should have it. At Truck and Tap Alpharetta, I'm going to hit the foeder again with Bold Monk's Compassion. It's a blend of young and foeder-aged wild ales with passion fruit and hibiscus, so it's going to be lovely to look at. And finally, at the Lawrenceville location, I'm going to have to try Allagash's Ski House. It's a full-bodied wheat beer brewed with fresh ginger. It clocks in at 7.5%, and some people are claiming that it is turbocharged Allagash White, and that sounds like something I really need to try. So there you have it. Those are my picks for the week. If you'd like to check out the tap list for yourself and make your own picks, visit truckandtap.com. In addition to the entire tap list for each location, you'll find out which food trucks will be on site and what events will be happening for the entire month. So you can plan your entire adventure at truckandtap.com. And thank you to Truck and Tap for your support.
Thanks, guys. We appreciate you. You are awesome. Brian,
Yes.
The next contested overrated thing is, and I'm just going to agree blanket statement with this one, hard tea.
Yeah, Aaron Jordan from Resident Culture. I don't know if Aaron's a he or a she. So Aaron Jordan says most are overly sweet, taste artificial, and it covers up any nuanced flavors. I haven't had many of them, and I'm inclined to agree. I think those are probably exactly what they are. They're just about delivering sweet alcohol.
It's a candy cocktail. Yeah, candy alcohol delivery system. That's the only ones I've had are. Doesn't Mike's do one? I know they do lemonade. Did they do a hard? I think they do a hard tea. But I can't recall. Not a beverage I seek out that often.
If I'm gonna have tea and alcohol together, I'm probably gonna go Three Taverns. They do a lot of tea related beers, and I'm fine with that.
Yeah.
So there's nuance there to be had. Also lactose, but nuance typically. So
nuanced lactose.
That's right. Nuanced
Brian,
lactose.
moving right along.
Yes.
And this one I'm a little confused by. Overly fruited sour beers. And Brian, I'm going to say the reason I'm a little confused with that is I think these were trending 5-6 years ago. At least they were in this area. So maybe in other places. I honestly don't think they're as hyped as they used to be. I would say at this moment right now, based on my exposure, I don't believe they're overrated because I think the hype's died down.
I think you're right. And I think there might be some places, maybe like the Florida Weiss places where fruited sours is still maybe a thing. I don't know. I haven't checked it out. There might be some places where this is still hanging on, but for the most part, I agree with you. I think that this is kind of like a 2019 is calling, and they would like to have some words with you about overly fruited sours. So I don't know when the last time it was I saw like the big smoothie sour,
Yeah, they had a minute. Now that you mentioned it was kind of come and go. They maybe had, I don't know what, 6 months, a year of hype. There's a place called Smooge, I think, that did them. Like it was a real brewery that broke off to do their smoothie sours. You got, 450 North. I think they're out of Ohio, if I'm not mistaken.
I still see some of their stuff around. Yeah.
You know what? I've tried some. And if you want a super fruity tropical punch creamy drink, They nail that, man. They're really tasty there. If you're wanting a beer, no. I mean, technically, yeah, but they're just it's just liquid candy, essentially.
It's slightly easier to get one of those than just go to like a Smoothie King and pour some vodka into it. It's
yeah. So that's anyhow. So maybe they're, and I do know, Brian, talking about lagers and that, not long ago I was talking to someone, I think in like Chicago and California. I was like, how's the lager scene there? And they're like, we really don't have much. And I think that Atlanta was a place where we've got 5 or 6 more now breweries that focus on like the classic lager. So I think it's been maybe a little bigger here in some areas, some other areas, and even some that are very beer centric. So, could be a trend that's popping around other places, like you said there.
Yeah. So we'll move on to the next one if we're all ready for that.
I'm done. Yeah. Go right ahead, Brian.
Trying to get through this list. It's longer than I thought. Jordan Schiles from Mash Gang in Denver says triple and quadruple IPAs are overrated. He says when every beer on the menu starts at 7% ABV, don't find it difficult to imagine why people are not stopping in for a few midweek pints. I'm at the age now where my hangover starts just looking at them. So I think the idea is everything is too boozy right now. But I disagree with him. I think the triple and quadruple IPAs are actually still doing very well, and I don't think they're overrated. I think that maybe everything shouldn't be.
I think our buddy Dave in San Diego would disagree with that. He's a quad fanboy. He's a quad IPA fanboy and hits those.
I am too. I mean,
I'm not. I don't know that they're overrated. I mean, do your own thing. I think there's, you know what? America's always been a place where taking things to the extreme has been fun, has been kind of our, we put trucks 15 feet in the air and then put testicles on them, that's, things like that happen here. So, doing a quad, we had a brewer that used to be here in Atlanta that did a quint one time.
That's right.
And I'm sure they've done it even more. So I can't comment either way on that one, Brian. I do not hear a ton about, no, I like a triple. Quad, maybe so, but okay. I'll take old Mash Gang's word for it that there's a bit more out there going on than I realize.
Yeah, just in the US, going extreme is just our average. That's our thing. So
Brian, next up, cold IPAs. Not surprising to see that make the list here.
Yeah, not surprising. Ivan Dedek from Myers Creek Brewing in Cazenovia, New York. I don't know that place. Maybe you do, as somebody who lived in New York many years ago. But he says people are claiming it is a revolutionary style that would help rejuvenate the beer industry. However, the style is essentially just a dry hop lager that uses adjuncts, and I have a hard time disagreeing with that. He also had comments where he said nice things about the brewed IPA as a style. And said it was actually was better. Yeah. So like I have a hard time disagreeing with Ivan. So
the people that originated and believe in cold IPAs will fight you over saying that they're just, an IPL. We had a buddy here, our buddy Adam here in Atlanta. He worked for RIP Eventide. He was a brewer at Eventide. But he did a cold IPA, and I made a comment about it being a lager. He's like, I knew I was ready for that. This is an ale yeast. This is a cold IPA. So, you know what? If you love them, Brian, you're a fan, aren't you? The ones you've had of the cold IPAs?
Yeah. I like the brewed IPAs too, and I missed those. Yeah. That was a missed opportunity. If people could have done them better from the get-go, I think they would still be with us.
Brian, one more hype item. I'm going to move this along because we are spending a lot of time on it. And I feel this one probably hit you right in the heart when they said this.
Probably.
The stovepipe can.
Yeah, I might have to fight with Daniel Gadala Maria from Finback Brewing over this, but he said this format favors national breweries over local ones that can't afford extra equipment and space. This trend is working to minimize the variety of offerings that might otherwise be available to you. And this sounds like sour grapes for somebody who just doesn't have the space and the money to make them. And I think it also under misunderstands where people are going to get the stovepipes. This is a convenience store, C-store purchase for like
they're popular there, man. You see them there all the time.
This is not a bad thing. I don't think they're overrated, and I think they're hot, and they will continue to grow. So I disagree here a lot, actually, and I think they're fun.
So we called in the craft world, the 22-ounce bottles are called bombers, and back in my day when we were drinking macros out of them, it was just a double deuce is what we called them. And you get those. And so that's been popular. I mean, that's essentially a glass stovepipe, basically. You know,
Basically,
so
yeah.
you got that packaging there. But, you know, we've got Beer Koi Nation. Appreciate your input this week. And he's talking about, I'm not going to acknowledge your comment about avoiding sours because I disapprove of that, Beer Koi
Yeah.
Nation. But, you know, he's talking about avoiding adjuncts in beer and that, and just mentions that, you know, there's so many hop varieties out there that you can just really do. You can do a lot of things without having to throw adjuncts or fruit or souring and all
Yeah.
that. There's just a ton you can do with beer, with your grain selection, your yeast selection, and your hop selection there. So, you know, I heard an analogy recently. We're actually talking about fragrances and perfume. We won't go off on that because we know how y'all feel about it,
Yeah.
talking too much about that. But they were talking about how they create new fragrance molecules and that. And this very famous perfumer was saying, we don't need to do that. They said, you think about your inkjet printer, you have, you know, four cartridges in there, and you can create like 16 million colors out of those 4 cartridges. So, you know, there's by slight adjustments to different things you can do. And there's definitely more than 4 different hops and yeasts and malts out there. So there's a whole world of flavor out there still to discover. And even the methods in which you put them all together, ferment, where you mash and all that. So
Near
it's
limitless
fun. It's good
and
stuff,
water
man.
chemistry too. Like there's all the stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. Brian, I'm going to skip this one. I'm going to skip this one for time. We're going to talk about the important. Is that an important story to you, Brian? The next one?
Which one? Oh, the one about the NA beers?
Well, see, I wasn't saying the title
Okay.
and making
All
people that we were avoiding the story. So now I'm either going to have to let you tell your story
We can
or
skip it.
edit this out. No, you go ahead, Brian.
Okay, so
You
this
go
one,
ahead.
I didn't want to skip this because this actually connects really well with
Okay.
what we were just talking about.
All
So
right.
contrary to what some of the brewers may believe, non-alcoholic and higher ABV beer segments are still seeing growth, according to Bump Williams Consulting. In fact, non-alcoholic beers continue to show record growth in sales. The numbers seem to indicate that non-alcoholic beer is not yet close to oversaturation. Tracking indicates that low and no alcohol beer have increased dollar sales 6% year to date, and high ABV beers, 8% or more, have increased dollar sales 7.4% year to date. According to Bump Williams, the high ABV beer segment alone is bigger than the entire hard seltzer segment, and it's not getting industry buzz that you would expect for this kind of performance, which is indicated by what we were just talking about. Middle ABV beers, 5 to 7.9%, have lost 1.7% of beer dollar market share since 2022. So that's the middle section is declining the most. This isn't the first time we've talked about the bifurcation of beer, which is the splitting of them. And it's interesting to see the trend still continuing because it's been like a year or so that we've been talking about this at least. Showing alcohol content is an important factor in consumer purchasing decisions, both on the high end and on the low and no end. So
low and no. People want no alcohol or all of it.
Yes.
It sounds like.
So,
Okay.
right. All or nothing.
Fair enough.
That sounds about right.
Fair enough. A big boozy stout or give you your lime cerveza with no alcohol in it.
So triple and quadruple IPAs still hot.
Still hot. Brian, we've got a group in Atlanta that goes by the Atlanta Area Beer Elders. And I believe some of those guys are in their hundreds, 130 years old, or they look like it anyhow. So shout out to the Atlanta Area Beer Elders. But scientists have done some study and they said there is an age that you probably need to quit drinking.
Yeah. It's getting reported everywhere. And the beer elders are well preserved. But according to Dr. Richard Restak, a neurologist and dementia expert, there is an age at which you should quit drinking to preserve the neurons in your brain, and that age is 65. Apparently, at 65, on average, humans reach some sort of lower threshold for neuron volume in the brain, and alcohol, which is a very weak neurotoxin, could lead to accelerated neuron loss, which would impair both memory and could hurt cognitive function, and it could increase your risk for dementia. He also says that drinking in later years increases your risk for falls, injury severity, and can cause slower recovery for injuries that do happen. His official recommendation is to gradually reduce your drinking in your early 60s, then limit drinking to rare special occasions from 65 and beyond, and plan to quit entirely by the age of 70 to preserve your mental and physical health. I can't speak to what I'm going to do in the future, but I'm not sure I'm going to adhere to this.
Not plans on that. Well, we see those old ladies that it's like, today's my 120th birthday, and I have a glass of scotch and a cigar every single day. So
those people are my hero, but
Yeah,
they probably have won a genetic lottery where they're just kind of impervious to all that stuff. So
yeah, good stuff. Well, y'all, that about wraps it up for our show this week. We appreciate you all hanging out with us. We hope that you all have a good week. If you enjoy what we're doing, we would love for you to tell a friend about the show. Tell them to tune in and check it out. If you really love what we're doing, we'd appreciate you supporting us on Patreon. Just go to patreon.com/beer guys, and we'll give you cool swag. We'll get you into the Discord server, and we have, I need to go back, Nate, find it. We need to give a shout out. We have a new Patreon supporter there, and you know what, we'll get that shout out next week. We'll do a shout out there. But Eddie H, Eddie, thank you so much for supporting the show. We appreciate it very much. But y'all, we hope that you all have a very good week, and don't forget to drink local. Cheers. Good stuff.
yeah.
Y'all, we are going to get cut off on Instagram here in a minute, so we're going to go ahead and end the live stream. Again, if you are a Patreon supporter, just drop on over to the Discord chat. We're going to put the link in there to join us for the after party to have a good time. Beer Koi Nation, thanks for joining us, man. It's been great, chatting with you, getting your input there. You seem to have good taste. So,
and I also like the 4% beers.
Beer.
Yeah,
I do too. That's a good number. But y'all have a good one. We'll see you next week.